Hello there, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I have so many updates I want to share. I don't know, it feels like it's more than normal. So this video may be a little longer than it usually is. I'll try to talk a little fast and not keep you here too long, but I'm really excited to talk about what I've read, what I'm reading, what I've tried to read. Here we go. For slow reads, besides the Wolf Crawl, Thomas Cromwell read-along that I'm doing, and many of you are doing it with me too, as we are all doing it, hundreds of us. I am also on my own reading Anna Karenina first thing in the morning, just like I do with Wolf Hall. I'm not reading Wolf Hall every day. We're doing like, 30-page chunks or something, and I'm parsing that out, usually reading it like today on a Sunday morning. But this, I'm reading on my own first thing before I get my morning routine started. I read a chapter or two chapters or sometimes 3 chapters of Anna Karenina. So I'm about a third of the way through, and I still maintain, I'll share my thoughts in more depth maybe when I'm halfway through. I still maintain that I am more interested at this point in all the other characters rather than Anna and Vronsky. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention the translator of this edition. This is a QPB edition, Quality Paperback Book Club edition, and the translator is Constance Garnett. And I'm kind of part of a read-along hosted by, I don't remember who the hosts are, so I will add them here when I'm editing. Sorry about that. But there's a read-along of Kate Briggs's This Little Art and Roland Barthes' The Pleasures of the Text. These are lectures, Roland's lectures, that have been translated by Kate Briggs. And this book talks a lot about Roland Barthes. I've dropped off reading The Pleasures of the Text. I had it out from the library, and I didn't find that I was drawn to it nearly as much as reading this, so I've just kept on reading this loosely in that schedule that the read-along has. There's a Substack for the read-along. I love this so much. Kate Briggs has taught me so much about This Little Art translation. I don't think I can accurately, I can't speak about the art of translation the way that Kate Briggs can, but I'll just say that it has completely changed my mind. I'm like 100 pages in. It's completely changed my mind about the whole point of translation and how the translator, yes, is present in the translation. There's a whole argument that's been made about the Lowell Porter, I think it's Helen Lowell Porter's translation of The Magic Mountain. That's a whole other story. I will talk about this book in more depth, but I'm telling you, it's blowing my mind. It is so readable. That's the thing. It's done in like these little, I don't know, blurbs, essays, thought bubbles. I'm just loving this. I'm slowly reading that. As I said, it's a very slow read of that book. Okay, what have I read? In the last video, I mentioned that I finally pulled this off of my shelf and started reading it. Freedom, a novel by Jonathan Franzen. I think this was the novel, well, it must have been the novel after corrections, published in 2010. This book really gets off to a great start. I loved the character building of Patty and Walter Berglund and their 2 kids. I loved how Jonathan Franzen created this scene where the young Patty and Walter had chosen to move to a rather rundown part of St. Paul, Minnesota, Ramsey Hill. They were young pioneers of Ramsey Hill, the first college grads to buy a house on Barrier Street since the old heart of St. Paul had fallen on hard times 3 decades earlier. So they buy this Victorian house, they spend a lot of time renovating it. Right in the very beginning, we get an early snapshot of Patty Berglund. She'd been a standout athlete in high school and college and possessed a jock sort of fearlessness. From her first day in the neighborhood, she was helplessly conspicuous. Tall, ponytailed, absurdly young, pushing a stroller past stripped cars and broken beer bottles and barfed up old snow. She might have been carrying all the hours of her day in the string bags that hung from her stroller. Behind her, you could see the baby-encumbered preparations for a morning of baby-encumbered errands. Ahead of her, an afternoon of public radio, the silver palette cookbook, cloth diapers, drywall compound, and latex paint. And then Goodnight Moon, then Zinfandel. She was already fully the thing that was just starting to happen to the rest of the street. That is just an example of what I experienced for the first time, which is Jonathan Franzen's writing. I really enjoyed about, a third or a half of this book. Then it starts to go off of the road, and it really goes off the road, and we get into what I thought, and maybe this is just my problem, were tangents. Walter starts to work for this big coal guy. There's an environmental tangent, and they're supposed to be kind of doing good for some people, but not really. There's a whole tangent of Joey, which I really enjoyed in the beginning when Joey was, as a teenager, was kind of going off the rails. It was painful to watch some things happen with Patty, but still, that's part of the story. But then Joey's tangent kind of flowered and kept blossoming to the point where I just didn't care anymore. I don't know why. It was a week. It was a week that I was reading it, and I had lost my patience. I tried and I tried and I tried, but then I just kept finding myself turning the pages. It felt like Don DeLillo's White Noise when it completely starts going in a different direction than it starts off, and Eleanor Catton's Burnham Wood together. But then I don't know what happens, because I was about 200 pages from the end and I stopped reading it. So that was it. I really hung on and I hung on. As I said, I was having a week where I lost patience with this, and I had no interest in finishing it, and I'm perfectly okay with that. However, the good news is I really like Jonathan Franzen's writing. There's a couple other pages that I marked here where stand out characters expressing themselves in ways they're so beautifully written. So I'm looking forward to trying something else at some point in time. He tends to write long books, so I don't know when that's going to be. Probably a lot of you are going to say the corrections. I think it's Sonia that said from an enthusiastic reader that she said she loves this, and I can see why. I just couldn't handle the off-track thing. It was just the week for me. So good news, I have a new author that I'm now interested in and that I will someday read another book of. At the same time, I was reading Henry James's The American. I didn't know anything about this book. I hadn't read it. I hadn't read the back or anything like that. I wanted to go in cold. The only thing I knew was this is one of his earlier novels, which I wanted to read first. The reason I read this, even though some of you had made some wonderful recommendations about The Portrait of a Lady and a couple others, was it was the one I owned, other than The Wings of the Dove, and I wanted to read an earlier one. So that's why I chose this. Again, that's why I chose both of these books, because I was just in a place where I needed something to read. I wanted to pick something I already owned, and I ended up with this. I spent about half of this book really enjoying the writing, but not really caring about Newman, the main character, Christopher Newman. Not really caring. He goes to Paris. He's done well. He's an American going to Europe. He's staying with a family, or at least he's being hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Tristram. And they insist that he is introduced to Madame de Cintré. That's my attempt at French. And she is she is divorced. And she is a Bellegarde, a family of diminished fortune and almost as old as France itself, the family she belongs to. So things happen between them. They get smitten with each other, or at least he finally gets smitten with her and decides, you're the person that I want to marry. That's where the book takes off. I won't give you details about what happens, but it's about halfway through that the book really took off for me. I can't say that I ever cared about Newman whatsoever, but I was just intrigued. Like, it was like this cat and mouse, and the family becomes a real pain. And what I really enjoyed was the part of the story where Newman just like decides, like, you know what, family of Madame de Cintré, forget it, gloves are off. Like, you guys, I am done with you telling me I'm nothing because I'm an American and I've made my own money and I don't have a profession, or I'm not landed gentry, and I don't have a title. Well, you're worse than that. So there, I have something on you. I'm paraphrasing, but like, I loved it when the gloves came off. Like, and those scenes started happening. That's when it really lit up for me. So ultimately, I really enjoyed this. I read the introduction later, which I really enjoyed. And I read about how this book was received in America and how it was received in Europe. And it was received well in America. It wasn't received very as well in Europe. And there's a reason for that. But to tell you what the reason is will reveal some of the book, so I won't do it. But I encourage you to read about the book and how it was received after you read the story. But yeah, I'm glad I read it, because now Henry James, I've read a Henry James. I'm off to the races with Henry James, and I'm looking forward to reading another one. So that was good. And then I finished this book, Leonard and Hungry Paul, which I wouldn't have known about had it not been for Bob the Bookerer, including it in his best of for 2023. I will try to link that video down below. I've already told him that I read this book and that I adored it. This was the book he was talking about in that video where he just spontaneously, like, his eyes got watery again. He was bringing back to mind his experience of the book. And Ronan Hession, this is his debut novel, and as of like this book, he hadn't written anything else. And this was written in 2017 or 18. This is about two 30-somethings, gentle men, Leonard and Hungry Paul. Hungry Paul is a nickname. They both live with their parents. Leonard was living with his mother until his mother recently died at the time of this book. So he's living in the house alone. And Hungry Paul lives with his parents, and his sister is about to get married. Yeah, no real plot, just all character, vibe, gentle, caring people that don't really fit into the world, this world in the 2000s with smartphones and texting. And, you know, they do some of that, but they're content within themselves. They like being in the company of their family and aren't either encouraged or aren't really motivated to be on their own. But like with Leonard, when his mother died, he's very sad, and it's sad for him to be in the house by himself, but he does it. He's doing it. He has a job from Monday through Friday. Hungry Paul has a job only a couple days a week. And then he volunteers out with his mother at a retirement home, visiting people. Hungry Paul seems to be a little bit more less independent a little less independent than Leonard does. But they're friends, and Leonard goes over to Paul's house every Friday night and they play board games, and life is just fine. They're not in need of anything. They're very content with themselves and with the people around them. They do engage with life. They just aren't, they're just not like getting it done and striving for more and, searching for a partner. So it's so delightful to be in the company of these two people who are just fully themselves. Now, Hungry Paul's sister worries about Paul because she feels that he doesn't try hard enough to be independent, that he should be living by himself and fully supporting himself. And she's worried that their parents are getting older, and how will Hungry Paul support himself? What's going to happen when he's all by himself? The monologue, the message that Hungry Paul delivers to his sister in a bathroom where she's getting ready for something or she's getting ready to go to bed and he's standing there with her. She's staying overnight in the house because it's her wedding. It's the night before her wedding. The monologue that he delivers near the end of the book to his sister about his own well-being. Oh my gosh, I'm going to tear up. Oh my gosh. About his own ability to be okay, and that he really has always been okay, and that everything he's doing in his life is exactly what he wants to be doing. I love this book so much. It's already one of my favorites of the year. And yeah, it's not going to change anybody's life. It's one of those books, but I guess it's kind of changed mine because it was such an enjoyable experience. And isn't that one of the big reasons why we're reading is to enjoy ourselves. So thank you, Bob, for bringing this to my attention. Whew. I read some NetGalley books last year, and I didn't really enjoy myself because I didn't really know anything about NetGalley, and I just randomly chose to read some books, and I got the books, and I either didn't enjoy them, so I never reviewed them, I never finished them, or I just picked books that were so far in advance that then it was crickets. I didn't really want to talk about them until it was time, and then I tried to remember when it was time. But anyway, I don't know. I signed back on NetGalley, and I asked for a couple books that were going to be published pretty soon. So I better figure out when this was published. But I mentioned this on my Instagram, which I rarely post on. And I got Dear Edna Sloan. It's I think a debut novel by Amy Sheeran. She's done some writing before. This might be her first novel. I got to tell you, it was a cover selection all the way. It's being published by Red Hen Press on April 30th. But, when you start to see it in the bookstore on NetGalley, because you can get it on NetGalley yourself and read it, it's an epistolary novel. And it's about this young guy in the publishing world. I think he works for a literary publication. What's his name? Seth. And he's trying to find Edna Sloan, who was an author in her debut novel was an instant classic and commercial success, vaulting her into the heady echelons of the 1980s New York lit scene. Then she dropped off the face of the earth, and he's trying to find her. Well, this is going to be a spoiler alert, so if you don't want to hear what I'm about to say, then wait until I'm holding up another book, okay? But the whole premise of the book is that Seth is trying to find Edna Sloan, and he's writing letters, he's writing emails, he's texting his friends, he's texting his manager. So it's all multimedia epistolary. I love that. It was just like page turner, page turner, page turner. So much fun to read that kind of book. And he does find her, I will say, that's the spoiler. But then the whole 2/3 of the book is this mostly epistolary relationship that they form. And through the communications, most of them emails, he's learning more about, and she's willing to share more about why she never wrote that second book. And we're learning more about Seth because Seth is comfortable sharing things with Edna. It's not a perfect book. Sometimes it's a little too didactic. I think there's communications in there that could be edited out, stuff like that. But it was really fun. It's 200 some pages long, but it was fast-paced. It was truly fast-paced, and I really enjoyed it. And what I'm reading now, lastly, I tried to read Come and Get It by Kylie Reed. I haven't read her first book, but the sound of it, Such a Fun Age, has always been attractive to me, and I never read it. I was attracted to this cover. I did not realize it was such a chunkster. So that was like, wow, when I saw it, it was like, 300 some pages. And so for me, for a new release to be almost 400 pages is tough. It's tough. But I started reading it, and I loved the whole introductory premise of this college in Alabama. And we're getting to know Millie, the residential, what's an RA stand for? I'm forgetting now. Oh my gosh. Residential aid, residential something. And then this older woman, Agatha, who's like a journalist who's coming to do some research on, I don't remember now what she's there for, but I read a few chapters, about 60 pages, and I could just tell this wasn't going to be for me. I did not want to devote the time to an almost 400 page book. So it might be good. Check it out. I just am not going to keep reading it. What I am reading is, I did get out of the library, you can't really tell what it says, but it's Brideshead Revisited. I've just started this, so I don't have any thoughts on it. I think I'm like 30 pages in or something. I'm at the point where they're revisiting Brideshead. He and this, the two main characters whose names I don't know. I didn't realize that it has a subtitle. Brideshead Revisited, The Sacred and Profane Memories of Captain Charles Ryder. So I guess one of the characters here is Charles Ryder. And then this story is told in first person. So it starts off when I. So that's why I'm not remembering the person's, the main character's name. But we'll see. I don't know. It could be too early for me to be reading another Wall. I'm kind of in one of those places where I don't know what other next fiction I want to read. So we'll see. But the thing that I am reading and enjoying is Say Nothing. I finally got this out of the library. A True Story of Murder and Memory in Northern Ireland. I'm like a lot of you. I read some wonderful Irish literature last year, one of them being Trespasses, and it got me really curious about the Troubles. And as many of you I know are familiar with, it is not an easy subject. It is not something that's simple to learn about. This very old friction. What I love is what many of you love about Patrick Radden Keefe. If you've heard it before, I will say it again. He tells a story by using the thread of people involved in the conflict or in the thing that he's talking about, like the Sackler family book that he wrote. So he's using the thread of generations of families, but also just particular people. And that person is the thread through the story. So he starts off with the scene of a 38-year-old woman who's been taken from her home with 6 children in it by this gang of people. We don't know what's happened yet. Then he goes back and tells us something about this woman, but about other people. And I think he's then going to go forward again, and we're going to have enough background to understand why that scene happened. We also very early on get to know who this person is on the front. And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, because when you learn who this person is, then it really starts to add even more to the story. So as we're riding along with characters that feel like you're reading a fiction story, you're also learning more and more about this very complex history and thing called the Troubles in the 1970s. I'm only 50 pages in, and that's been my experience so far. So yeah, crazy. I'll show you one more thing that I have out of the library, since I didn't do a library haul. I haven't read a page of this yet. I had it on hold the minute I read about it. I don't know whether it's going to be a book for me right now, but I just wanted to show you I have it out of the library. You've probably seen this around, Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I think Kaveh Akbar is a poet. Yes, poems have appeared in the New Yorker and so on, and I think this must be his first book. Cyrus Shams, the novel's hero, is a young man grappling with an inheritance of violence and loss, a mother whose plane was shot down over the skies of the Persian Gulf in a senseless accident, and a father whose life in America was circumscribed by killing chickens on a factory farm in the Midwest. Cyrus is a drunk and addict, a poet whose obsession with martyrs leads him into the mysteries of his past. Sounds pretty amazing. I don't know if this is going to be the right time for me to read this, but we'll see. I just wanted to show you that I have this, and I didn't get to it yet. Wow, that's it. So, what do we have here? Oh my goodness. I can't really say anything about Martyr. So, tried it, didn't like it. These are my current reads. That I talked about. Leonard and Hungry Paul. Before I go, let me recap January. My first Henry James, my first Evelyn Waugh, my first Toni Morrison. It's been fantastic. I'm recapping January because I'm not going to finish any books in the next 3 days. Please share with me any of your thoughts, and let's continue the conversation as always in the comments. That is one of the most enjoyable things for me to do, is to talk with all of you in the comments. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.